Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West. I have a wonderful guest today. We're going to talk about something really unique, but at the same time, something that's very commonplace with every company, every business, every organization on this planet. And it's going to, be around that cyber training. And some people, it's a dreaded word. Some people's like, okay, this time of year again, or have to check the box. But it's really an important thing that we're going to be discussing. But this is a unique approach that this founder and CEO is taking with their company, and not only a founder and CEO, they're also a investigative journalist. But the bigger title I love here is storyteller because nowadays with social media, everything needs to be really focused around a story. Everyone has a story to tell, and not only being a storyteller but also capturing people's story is a really important endeavor in and of itself. So without further ado, founder and CEO of Red Mirror Studios, which their tagline is they're the world's first fully independent film studio dedicated to the cyber industry. And we have Danielle Lewan. Levan. Oh, goodness. That's real. That's a real mistake, folks. So I'm not going to edit that out. Lewan. So welcome,
Yeah,
Danielle.
you got it, Jim. Hey, most people it takes about 3 or 4 tries. So thanks so much for having me. Again, just the time, the care, the commitment you put into having these conversations for cyber. And ultimately, these are stories in themselves. So I appreciate you letting me be part of your story.
Well, and again, thanks for forgiving quickly that flub up there. We're not going to edit that out, folks, because that's how authentic and real this is. So, let's get right down to it. What is the why? Kind of quoting Simon Sinek there. What is the why for Red Mirror Studios?
Sure. As we've progressed in, the most technological industry on the planet, it's very easy for us to forget that every single keystroke, decision, platform, tool, compliance standard, it's all made by humans. And Jim, I'll tell you from personal experience, when I got into the industry, I had never worked in cybersecurity before, much less done marketing. And people asked, how did you learn? How did you break in? And I said, I just went straight to the source. That's the first thing they teach you in investigative journalism. Go to the source. And so, fortunately, at the time, my work catered to case studies and testimonials and opportunities for me to get in front of these leaders, build that trust, and then have referrals from them and future customers. But I just began asking questions to anybody that was willing to answer them. And I think, again, when we look at how we learn, you look at mentors. You mentioned social media, the rise of influencers during COVID, which was the most important time in the history of the world where we have not been able to interact as
Yeah.
humans. And so we built platforms for which we could still hear from each other and learn from each other. So this really goes down into the psychology of behavioral change and us shifting back to what is sticky, what is memorable. And ultimately, what in cybersecurity we are all working towards going to reduce that risk.
Hmm. Well said there. And you bring up the topic about, going to the source, right? So with Red Mirror Studios, what are some of these sources that you guys are plugging into?
Yeah, great question. So at RSA, and again, we just came out of stealth about 8 weeks ago. So we are fairly new, even though we've been building undercover for some bit. But at RSA, and again, I will be completely honest with you, Jim, these are all friendlies of mine over the years that have also been mentors for myself in cyber. But we really chose a range of what I would call the legacy players. These are folks that were at the inception of the internet. We have a CISO that was the very first CISO for the TSA coming out of 9/11. Also, Secret Service agents, because as we know, physical and digital security is intertwined. These individuals have interrogated some of the most prominent cyber criminals in the world. But the reason that I bring this up is every single story that they speak to has a human element
Hmm.
or they relied on their own humanity, those cognitive skills to think in real time without all of the information, without a lot of the times good options to pick from. And we forget that when we document these breach reports and these disclosures of all of the conversations, decisions, and context that went into the outcome. And again, as somebody that's stepping into that next role, what is a better way to learn how to handle that than to learn from somebody that has already sat in that seat?
And we always talk about this word lessons learned, right? With incident handling, that's one of the important phases towards the end is document what you learn from it, right? And the famous quote from Sir Isaac Newton is, "If I have seen further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants." And when you're talking to these folks that's been there from like the day one of the internet, the day first data breaches, and all this great experience where there wasn't playbooks, there wasn't procedures or checklists to go from. And folks, if you're brand new to cyber right now, you're going into the industry that's super well matured at this point. We still got a lot of room to grow, of course, but we've matured to a point where there are checklists, there are frameworks, there's process frameworks, there's so much information that these trailblazers have laid those trails and cut those paths through the weeds for us, so that we're not just going in blind and like you said, with very few options that have been well defined yet. There's so many things that are well established and defined in our industry. So with that being said, it brings us to this topic that a lot of people, they cringe when they get that email or that notification that your yearly or your awareness training is due, your cyber awareness or your cyber training is due. And for a lot of folks, it's kind of a check the box for HR or a what I call the brute force, where they keep trying to answer the questions so they eventually get it right and move on, get their certificate, and they forget about it for another 11 half months, and then they get the next notice, and a year after year it becomes a thing that is really, I hate to say it this way, but I'll go ahead and say it. It's either by real cyber IT folk. When we see it, we laugh at it, right? Like the DoD for years, they, people would always, every time they did a refresh of their training, they would try to make it fun or what's today's called edutainment, but they would always fall short of the mark. And of course, cyber professionals would rib it, would take memes of it and so forth. What have you seen around this space, through talking with these professionals and just your own interface in an industry with training? What is working and what is not working?
Fantastic question. And boy, is this a hot topic right now, not only for folks that are looking to break into the industry from an awareness training and understanding those guardrails, but then once you're in it, and then to your point, cyber awareness training affects every single person who is likely employed. Does not matter if you're in the industry or not. I did a Truth in Two recently on this, Jim, and Truth in Two is a segment that Red Mirror Studios has where we break down the human side of cyber in 120 seconds. And I talked exactly about security awareness training. I am a threat actor's favorite employee. HR is always hunting me down to finish those security awareness trainings. And Jim, I would be lying to you if I did not try to complete those as quickly as possible, close the tab, and move on with my day. And I know the importance. I work in the industry.
Mhm.
Uh, but when we look at this, and I want to be mindful, because I also mentioned I've actually wanted to go when I was younger in my career and learn from the chief marketing officers that have built some of the strongest capabilities of these platforms. Cindy Zhao at KnowBe4, Tom Richards at Ningeo. I mean, brilliant people. They are not the problem. The problem is how we have built what is success for security awareness training. And right now, it is a check the box. An auditor comes in, you know, you got breached. Where were your employees? Where were they trained? Well, we have a 94% completion rate. Okay, check. That's not the issue. But what's happening is breaches are rising, as we know, and more often than not, it is the human element that is the door that is opened. So when we look at this, we have to optimize for outcomes, behavioral change, not documentation. So if we continue to build awareness training that is optimized for documentation, that's the reality that we're going to get. And so I think as an industry, we need to take a hard look into how can humans effectively understand the stakes, but
Mhm.
also where they fit in from a cybersecurity perspective.
Yes.
And that is where, we are really bringing in another human element that is not the technology, the features, the phishing, you know, things that not many people can wrap around their head in 20 minutes when they need to get this done. So that's my thoughts, but I do think that this takes a village. It's not, one individual that's going to come in and resolve how we train and come up the ranks when it comes to understanding cyber inherently.
And for those of you watching right now, here's the thing I'm going to just put there for you. When we talk about the awareness training, we talk about data breaches and the human element. Nine times out of ten, people want to think about that nincompoop employee, the dimwit, that's just going to open up every link and answer and give out the information. But folks, it's not the office, idiot. It is sometimes it's our own IT staff, our cyber team. Classic recent example, a few years ago, the MGM Resorts had that breach, and they were shut down for like a day, I think a day plus. It really cost them a lot of money, and it was very damaging to the reputation because for the longest time, it was just kind of given and assumed that casinos with their big budgets and massive amount of money that they work with, that they had the best in class cybersecurity teams protecting them. And of course, it was through some social engineering, some old school social engineering through LinkedIn that they were able to compromise an individual with privilege level access. So it was the team that has got the keys to the kingdom that they were able to compromise. So again, the human element is not always just the office idiot. No, it's our trained cyber professionals that are also targets as well as, they're the gatekeepers to get in the network. So again, folks, it's everybody. It's everybody from the front desk to the boardroom. Everything in between is part of the stakeholders to protect an organization. But I'm going to augment your statement there with the key word because I've been wrestling with this whole awareness training for about 8 years. And so 8 years ago, I was having some discussions with some colleagues. We were laughing at the DoD updating the training and how it was just laughable. And I just said, okay, I get it. We're all laughing at this, but here's the thing. How would you make it better? Like we're all, what I call level 99 professionals that was having a discussion. They were like, well, I'd make it shorter. Everybody had their different opinions of it. But the one thing was they couldn't come up with what I would say what is the thing that would make it, and this is the word that kept coming in my mind for 8 years, relevant? How do I make that training relevant? As I said earlier, from the front off, from the receptionist to the boardroom, how do I make it relevant to every member of an organization? And I don't want to pitch this now because it's still a presentation and I'm trying to get into some conferences, but I did come up with it the past year. I developed insecurity. I write it lowercase in, capital security, as a playful way of saying that we're all insecure, right? But what I do, and I'll just give a real quick high level, is I have an audience. I call it an interactive audience participation presentation. It's a mouthful. But what I do is have people take the normal things that we all carry, like a wallet, a billfold, have their purse out. I have them go through how many IDs they're walking around with, how many bank cards, how many membership cards, all the things, because we're essentially walking data centers. And so while I'm doing this with them and they're doing their own analysis of their own wallets and purses and billfolds, I'll have on the screen, because I don't like death by PowerPoint, but on the screen at the end, once
Yeah.
we do this analysis, I show them by bullet points. These are all the security principles and concepts you just learned hands-on sitting there in your chair. But I build this as I teach more in 45 minutes than people learn in a 40-hour workshop. And what I
Mm.
do is that key word is relevance. But I believe that that's what we have to do, and your approach with your studios is using storytelling, which I think is also the most powerful mechanism to connect with people and where they see a part of themselves in that story. And that's also relevance as well, right? But that's to me is I think what we're missing in cyber awareness training and cyber training in general is making it relevant because we keep talking about protecting, privacy information, public healthcare information, PHI, because there's regulations and laws that we got to learn about all of a sudden in our business, right? Or the company policies of, how we handle data, how do we do this? And over time, it's like, well, okay, I made a mistake, mea culpa, but mea culpa doesn't matter when there's a data breach, right? So for a lot of folks, it's not relevant yet to them. But once you start turning cybersecurity to an individual's personal life of, being a walking data center or their mobile app security, when you start talking about their phone and they bring their phone out and that, because I do different acts in the presentation and I cover everything in cybersecurity to where people now finally it clicks and they get it. Because, a lot of times we talk about going over their head or trying to wrap your brain around something. But when they do something as simple as reviewing a wallet, looking through their phone apps, and learning about concepts and principles that they've heard about, but they didn't connect the dots yet. Now the dots are connected. And the one statement I love that I do during the presentation is I tell an audience, once you know something, you can't unknow it. And that's the kind
Uh-huh.
of the caution that when they leave, don't forget about what we just did. And there's a part of it which I'm not going to share right now on this, but there's a crucial element with a piece of paper that blows everybody's minds that when they leave that session, that's the part that they can't unknow, which I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to take away from talking about Red Mirror Studios. So because this is I think what someone watching this to this point right now is when are we going to see some of this content about from like these 11 and of course it's going to be growing these stories that are going to be shared by Red Mirror Studios. So can you talk about maybe the time frame? When's the big launch? When's the reveal?
Great question. So, right now, and actually even over the weekend, because that's what you do when you're a scrappy startup founder, our trailer for the series will be coming out soon. From there, and again, marketers who are listening to this know a drip campaign. So, each of those episodes are actually sponsored by vendors. This is vendors showing up to the table and saying, I believe in these security leaders. We need them. I'm going to support their message, their learning, their wisdom, what they've gone through. So again, this is also a bridge of that drastic gap between the CISO and vendor community. And those will be coming out this summer. So expect the trailer in the next week or two. One thing I did want to add, Jim, when you mentioned, again, how do you create change? When it comes to security awareness training, I want to break this down twofold because this is important of how we approach this, and I'll be brief. So I've sat down with Brandon Newman, who was the CISO of the MGM breach.
Hmm.
And right now, that is an off the record story and will be while he remains employed at MGM. Again, this is all, normal stuff.
Hmm.
But I will tell you, hearing the details of him getting what we call in the industry the call, and even hearing the human side. Brandon was a Black Hawk. I
Hmm.
mean, you look at this guy and his training and being equipped for crisis. He was for 2 months, did not have any of his own possessions. They brought him food, brought him clothes, couldn't see his children. So when you talk about the repercussions on a human to get picked up and not know when they're coming back to see their family, and this is a businessman, there is only so much training we can put in an education, a degree, a framework, and a certification that is going to prepare somebody like Brandon Newman to get that call for an MGM breach. That is why training needs to evolve on the cyber side of human to human. Now, for the person, right, we have the inherent human, well, not going to happen to me, as we talked about, or why should I care? Somebody, waits till they get a package stolen off their front porch before they install a Ring camera. I'm
Yeah.
guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. It is just human. But in that twofold approach, I can tell you right now, sitting down and hearing Brandon having gone through that and the 11 security leaders, I mean, Edna Conway is meeting with the United Nations.
Hmm.
These are Heather Hinton is teaching the Harvard graduates of AI security right now. These are the people that are going to be defending our country. And you hear the things that they've gone through where they'll tell you firsthand, there's no training. There's no way they could have equipped the next person other than telling you how they thought on their feet. And as a human, again, there's so much security awareness training and frameworks that we can have that will make us invincible, but it is learning from people who have learned the hard way or come out on top of what did they do when there was not a multiple choice answer in
Yeah.
front of them. And
Wow.
that's where we need to focus.
So, what would you say after talking to these 11 professionals that have phenomenal stories and things that they went through, like you said, with no playbooks, no guidance, had to just make the tough calls? What is one of the common themes you see recurring? If there is a thread that you could say, hey, this is a thing that I see as a thread that connects all 11 people's stories and experiences, what would and have you connected there?
Yeah, great question. So, what I will say is every security leader is an individual. This is not a one size fits all. So, when you talk about running a CISO campaign, just know you got 11 different CISOs in front of you that operate very differently. The through line is not a single one of them planned to get into the industry. One was a plumber, one was an artist, one was a baker, one was a teacher, one was a famous basketball player. Not one of them prepared to go into the industry, but they really self-learned and self-taught. So
Hmm.
folks that do want to
Right
get in
there.
the industry, that hasn't changed. Again, there is no straightforward linear path to be successful. Ask those questions, network, plug in. And then the second thing that I'll tell you that is just an inherent personality trait is they're never going to stop showing up. And this is where we get the documentation piece, Jim. Folks that are in AI right now and learning and are self-reliant on AI, these stories, you can't find them. Their wisdom does not exist. It is not documented. And a lot of the times, because these situations were classified, they shouldn't have been at the time.
Mhm.
But when it comes to learning, This is where we are making a record of the legacy players for the entirety of the industry that again, AI is not going to be able to scrape. So that through line of that servant's heart, all 11 of those folks did not get paid. They did not get their airfare covered. They did not get lodging covered. They made that time out of their day at the busiest conference of the world to
Wow.
come to our site location and sit down because they believe in this industry. They want to help the next person sitting in their seat, and they know that that person cannot learn anywhere online from what they've been through. So again, just that compelling of the drive to get into the industry and just the insatiable passion to stay in it no matter what they have gone through personally or professionally. You can't help but walk away from this series. It's almost like Top Gun. Boy, you want to just run outside and run as fast as you can and go do something great yourself.
Well, that's amazing. I'm just going to add two things. So, folks, if you're watching right now, if you can find I'll have the links and all the socials below for Red Mirror Studios. Follow, subscribe, do all the things you need to do to stay on top of when they start releasing content, because you're definitely going to want to watch this content, ingest the content, because again, these people again didn't get compensated for it. They truly believe in Red Mirror Studios and the mission that they're doing. And the other thing I want to mention, which he mentions the backgrounds of these folks, where they were teachers or they were in another, professional sport player. They were from all different kinds of backgrounds. And I always tell people when people approach me for the inevitable question, well, I want to do cybersecurity, but I'm not that technical. I'm not, I always tell people, can you read? Can you comprehend? If you could do those two things, you could do cyber. And I've helped over 150,000 people globally get their certifications, break into cyber. And I've helped people like one great story I have just to share real quick is an Army nurse, 35 years, retired out of doing that, served her country, but she had already did a program in the Houston area where she got a few certifications and got some training. Now she was trying to break into the industry, but everywhere she applied, they would see her resume and see 35 years of Army nurse. This is Houston. We got the medical center, we got hospitals galore. Why don't you just go back into working as a nurse? And she was like, I'm done that. I've done that part of my life. I'm ready for a new adventure, a new chapter. But she kept having those responses. And so I was on a panel at a conference where two double PhDs had advised her to start at service desk and help desk. You know, that old talk of start in the mailroom and work your way up to the boardroom. And I quickly interrupted them. I said, ma'am, please disregard what these two gentlemen just told you. I want to talk to you afterwards. And the guidance I gave her was 35 years as an Army nurse, those skills are transferable into cyber and IT. You've worked when people were at their worst and you know how to deal with people. So you either need to be in like a security operations center where it's the same kind of environment, but from an IT data perspective instead of a human perspective, but you're still dealing with people and having to make the calls and make those life-changing decisions, but for data instead of human life. But there's another type of role to look for. Look for a deputy or vice role where you can come in at your experience level with your degrees. You qualify to come in at that level. And of course, we all know deputies and vices do all the work to make the boss above them look good. But here's the key and the magic of that. You're getting all that necessary hands-on so that when your person that's above you that you're reporting to moves up and onward, you are in line for the throne. And I said, that's what you got to focus on. Stop looking at the entry level stuff because you're not entry level. You're actually beyond mid career. And she had some success after that discussion because she changed her aim of what she was focused on. But let's get back to that. Cyber has a story worth telling. You have a co-founder that is got a lot of experience in a particular industry. I will say the film industry. Could you talk a little bit about your co-founder?
Yeah, Clint Howard the second. Wow. I won't even go to how amazing of a friend and just an individual, a single parent bootstrapping this company with two young children, two young girls. So again, you go to that servant's heart and the type of people that are in this industry. So from a human perspective, I really could not have lucked out with a better partner. So Clint comes from the Hollywood film world. He works and has been picked up and commissioned by Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. He's done work for the NFL, Marriott, American Airlines. And so when I say that, I don't say flashy logos, but he
Mhm.
has been on very difficult stories with high stakes. So coming into this industry, he has the utmost respect, but also the professionalism to deal with this. Because I will tell you, especially as we get into Ben Halpert, who owns Savvy Cyber Kids for the last 20 years. And some of those stories, love Ben. Everybody knows
Yeah.
and loves Ben. But I'll tell you, he does not speak about online child predators in the abstract because he can't. And so some of this content, I will say, it is not light. It's not happy. It's that balance. And so for Clint to be able to handle those stories with care, but yet have the conviction to know that they need to be told in that delicate way, just a visionary. And again, he's the guy at RSA. We got a camera, a couple weeks before, and what he can do on set, Jim. I hope we can have you as a guest at some point because the magic that he creates before that CISO or security expert comes and sits down in the chair, it is an amazing experience. So, not just talented, but a genuine servant that's come into the industry looking to platform, again, voices and people that can help us all.
Wonderful. Well, please give me all of the socials, all of the URLs. They're going to be in the description below, folks. So you can pause this video, check out all those URLs. It's going to be in the description. So you don't have to do the Google search. We're saving you that Google search. Um, I want to get into kind of this is my favorite question for all my guests, by the way. It's the day one story because what was the story when the day one when you said, I want to do something that's impactful towards the cyber industry? Because you mentioned you was an investigative journalist, you've had a couple other hats you've worn in your career. But what was that day one story, and will you share it with us?
Absolutely. So pre-Red Mirror Studios and post-investigative journalism, my sweet spot, and again, this is what you get as a scrappy news reporter these days in a newsroom, that agility is building the marketing engine for startups. So I've come in on the ground floor. I would suffocate, Jim, at a Fortune 500 company. There are people that are way better at that stage of a company. But when there's a blank canvas, ooh, I'm the first person you should call. My previous company before Red Mirror Studios, Clint and I, he was actually at another media studio in the industry. Um, we started the very first docu-series for cyber, and it was called CISO, the worst job I ever wanted. What I identified talking to all of these CISOs is that unlike a lawyer and a doctor, this role is not formalized, right? There is no set path that essentially accredits and licenses that specific role and started going down that route and investigating it. At the time, early startups still identifying that product market fit. And so I really built this out as a sidecar for the company. Again, as we were getting off the ground, this could not have been better brand awareness. I'll be honest with you. And again, we're still facing some of these hurdles at Red Mirror Studios. There's an education gap, especially with highly technical founders, to understand why this format of engagement is so important. First, the company, and again, many folks said, you're not going to get the people to talk on camera. I said, okay, I have a history and a career of asking people on the worst days of their lives, losing their home, losing a family member, to talk to me on camera. Let me try. So we spent the next year really digging into this role. And to your point, that juxtaposition of the difficulty, the liability, the fact that you could face imprisonment. Why the heck would anybody want to be a CISO? But it is that inherent servant, protector, just heart that you can't get them away from it. During that project, and again, being in a vendor, there were a lot of politics involved. And from the VC to the company, it got to the point where I was asked to actually remove certain CISOs from the project that they'd had
Mhm.
conflict with.
Mhm.
And that's where the journalist shone through, and I actually said no. So I was let go, and Clint was let go just for our passion of the project. They've actually continued it. They've changed the name and changed some of the content, but all of the CISOs that were in there were willing to follow Red Mirror Studios and film with us
Good.
again. And we are fully supportive of the entity that is putting out this project and has still taken the time and care to see it through. And they fully supported us moving forward and creating what we needed in order to do this type of work, an independent studio. And so we saw the route, we understood what the limitations were and the constraints of being an early stage vendor, and decided, well, if we're going to do this the right way, we got to start it on our own with no investor, no outside politics, no vendor, no product to sell, the pure passion and determination to bring the smartest people in the world and let's build this together. So the last thing that I'll say, because I know I'm going on a little bit of a dialogue here,
It's
Jim, is
perfectly fine.
never be the smartest person in the room. The first person we brought on and as an advisor was Steve Zalewski. He's the former CISO of Levi's. Steve
Hmm.
is loved in this industry. And again, talk about being here from the inception. The second person we brought in was actually my professor at the University of Georgia, Dodie Cantrell Bickley. She's been a general manager of ABC, NBC news stations across the state. She's in the Georgia Broadcasters of Fame. So, from a media ethics perspective, she also just finished a PhD at 70 years old at the University of
Oh,
Georgia.
awesome.
Brilliant, brilliant woman. And then thirdly, we're bringing in Paresh Amen. He was a CISO and a BISO 5 to 7 times, and he's really kind of bringing in that business acumen and the security mindset, having come from Kyndryl, IBM, uh, large financial institutions. So I do want to make sure that I bring that in because while Clint and I are one heck of a team, we are constantly building stronger and smarter walls of people around us because that's what's going to get us to where we're hoping to go.
And I'm super excited to see this launch and see how this will grow in industry because it is something that's needed. Because again, we got to have more stories. We have to, connect the dots, right? My next question though is along your journey, and I think you might have mentioned a few of the names in that answer that you just gave on the previous question. But the goal of this question is to shine a light on those that have been mentors, colleagues, bosses, managers, directors, or just people that had a positive impact on our journey and our career so far. So the goal is not to kind of name drop, but it's more of shining a light, paying homage to the folks that were really tremendous and impactful to our career. So, is there a couple names you'd like to shine a light on?
Yeah, I typically would add a lot more because boy, is there a laundry list. Again, Jim, I will be the first to
It's like the
say,
Oscar acceptance speech. You don't have enough time to
right?
name everybody.
So should I start with mom? No, but mom really is there at the top.
That's
But
good.
no, I want to double down first and foremost on Dodie Cantrell Bickley. Dodie, being my professor in college, she will never forget a story in which it was 2:30 in the morning. I called her as my professor and I said, I'm in my pajamas. There's a bar raid in downtown Athens and I'm going to get the story. Is that okay? She goes, well, do you at least want to change out of your pajamas? I go, Dodie, there's no time. From there, I called her. She helped me get my first job at CBS. I have kept up with her since then, and she has been a mentor in every single walk of life, broadcast or not. To bring her onto this project, her be retired and be that wealth of information, but also somebody that has just been in my life for the last 15 years. I can't tell you what that feels like to still have somebody that believed in you at a college level come and work part-time, even in an advisory capacity for your company. And then I will also mention Paresh. Steve, I've known in recent years, but Paresh was on the customer advisory board of the very first cybersecurity vendor that I worked for. He was the person that was the most vocal, the challenger, the why. Why are we doing this? So what? And again, we talk about the essence of this type of work. I sat there in that customer advisory board meeting and I was 26 at the time as a VP already. And I listened and learned from Paresh how he thought about building, scaling, the obstacles, how to overcome those. And still to this day, his strategy mindset. And it was just asking questions. So to be able to work with these folks that I've kept up with, again, I mean, Paresh now is, 7, 8 years, and have them work together with me, just not on, in a third party entity. I can't tell you what that means personally, but also how excited that makes me to continue to grow Red Mirror Studios for the industry because these are the people that have the muscles. They've been around a lot longer than I have,
Mhm.
and will really, be those accelerators for us to make this happen sooner for the people who need it most.
Well, I'm glad that they've crossed paths in your life and still in your life and in this development of Red Mirror Studios. So this is part of the time of the podcast where I kind of would take what I call my moment of levity, where we take a little break from the tech talk and talking about the industry to just kind of what I say, just have a little bit of fun. So if you humor me, I'm going to shoot some rapid fire questions your way. Whatever the first
Love
answer
it.
pops in your head, just blurt it out. And hey, there's no right or wrong answer. So we're going to start off with one that splits all the IT and cyber folks in a room, right? It's going to split the room, okay? Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. Never seen Star Trek.
Which Star Wars trilogy sets are you the biggest fan of?
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I have two brothers, and so I grew up watching them. I don't know if I've seen Star Wars since I was a young girl, but I'd say because they started Star Wars at the end and then went back episodes,
Yeah.
right? The
Hmm.
very first Star Wars that came out ever, whatever episode or film that was, that is
Hmm.
my most favorite.
So that was with Luke Skywalker,
Yes,
Princess Leia, so the New Hope. Okay. What's your favorite character in Star Wars?
Princess Leia.
Princess
What
Leia.
girl doesn't love Princess Leia?
Carrie Fisher, I mean, amazing. Okay, cake or pie?
Cake,
What kind of cake?
red velvet,
Red velvet cake. Okay. Oh goodness, now my mind just tripped because I was like thinking of red velvet cake.
cream cheese
Um,
icing.
oh, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
No, you heard it there. Hot dog's not a sandwich. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was your last book that you've read?
Okay, so two of these are very different. Speaking of having a co-founder with two young girls that have a personality of confidence and stubbornness, I tell everybody with a young daughter that if you could bottle that up and sell it, you should. When I was a little girl, my most favorite book was The BFG by Roald Dahl, and my most favorite part in it was when the little girl says, be brave, BFG, be brave. And I remember as a little girl, this small tiny human in this window telling this giant to be brave and just the courage. And I was like, I'm going to be that little girl. And so that really set the stage for my life. And I still have a copy of that book and always will. And when the movie came out, today, a little different. I'll be honest with you. I am a TED Talk, self-help book kind of person, but I attended an Avanta conference about 2 years ago, and the keynote presenter had a book all about teamship. I need to find the author. I'm embarrassed that I
Okay,
don't know that off the top of my
perfectly
head,
fine.
but it's sitting next to my it's on my nightstand and I've read it now 3 times. And it's one of those books you want to keep reading and rehashing. And what it talks about is the difference between leadership and teamship.
Okay.
When my friends, and again, I'm 31 years old, here I'm a CEO. I tell everybody I'm not a CEO. I'm a marketer, I'm a salesperson, I'm an admin, it's teamship. How can I build the absolute best team in the world? My title does not matter. And I will say this, gentlemen, and I'll send you, Jim, the book after we log off here
Yes,
so I
I'll have
make
the
sure
links down
that
below.
I credit him. But the way that he articulates, again, this is all people, how much stronger and more successful we can be as a team than an individual, and how to build that, the human psychology behind it. It's worth a really, really great read, especially if you are starting a company of your own.
There's a wonderful internet image that shows a cart being pulled and like the person sitting in the cart, the person behind the cart, telling the team what to do. But there's also the servant leader that's helping move the cart as well. But there's a comedian, I think it was, I want to say it was Chris Rock that famously said, two people can move a couch real easy. And that's the idea there, right? It takes a team, takes people to do things, right?
Yes.
So I love that's what read about in that book. So I look forward to getting that link, folks. We're saving you Google search. The links will be to the books in the description below. Do want to be respectful of your time, so we're coming up to the end of our podcast here. So we talked a lot about what Red Mirror is doing, but let's talk about what you have in the next 6 months to the rest of the year. What is on the horizon for Danielle and by association Red Mirror Studios? But what does the next 6+ months look like? What are the
Yeah,
goals, milestones? If you're going to be at an event, conference, etc.
yeah. So right now, as we mentioned, those 10 episodes, the series is called Declassified. Will be dropping this summer, trailer within the next week or two. The next large event that we'll be at will be Black Hat, of course, first week of August, and more details to come soon on the activation that we'll have there. And then for the rest of the year, we've got projects. And again, these are not quick turnarounds where we're essentially building out these series. And as we head into next year, you'll really start being able to benefit from this platform and kind of that content inventory in which you can start utilizing this for your team. So we'll then be launching partnerships, building out that channel model, and of course, as a business, scaling, but really figuring out those key players that, again, we can integrate with and not reinvent the wheel because storytelling is part of every single person's journey, every business, every conference, every entity. And so having those conversations and again, plugging in where we can in the community.
So this is my final question, but it's a very important question. A lot of us professionals, have demanding careers, work in startups, doing all of the work that's 24/7, really. But
Mm.
we oftentimes carve out that time for causes, nonprofits, volunteer charities, organizations that's doing positive work in the world, trying to do real good. And we try to, whether we give of our time, our money, or energy, this is a question where is there an organization that fits this bill for you that matters to you, you believe in them, that you want to shine a light on what they're doing in their mission?
Yes. Dusty Tails Rescue. So I fostered through them down here in Charleston, South Carolina. They
Wonderful
are a
city.
wonderful. If
If
anybody
you're in
comes and
Charleston,
visits,
folks, you got to stop by and have either lunch or dinner at Magnolia's. It's some of the best food I've ever eaten on the planet. But the
oh,
culinary scene in Charleston, folks, if you're not hip to the game of Charleston, I think it has some of the best culinary schools in the nation is in the Charleston area. So I just wanted to plug Charleston for a minute. It's a lovely city. Continue. I'm sorry to
we do
interrupt.
not go hungry here. You are absolutely right, Jim. We are not yeah, we definitely have no shortage of food options. So Dusty Tails, and I'll say how I got involved with them. South Carolina and some of the southern states, we do have a problem of uh overproduction. I don't know, actually, I'm gonna butcher this. How would you say that, Jim? I'm stopping here. Preventing animals from reproducing.
Yeah, just overpopulation is a general term.
Overpopulation, thank you. And so because we're in a rural area,
Mhm.
oftentimes, and the unfortunate side of this is that families that can no longer afford to take care of these animals, unfortunately, dump them. We
Yeah.
had some snowstorms, which are very rare in Charleston, in January, and I'd already, been exposed to this group and the work that they were doing, whether it was supplies or resources. But within the state, folks were just dumping animals and a lot of puppy litters. Those puppies could not survive those cold temperatures. And a lot of the shelters here in the South are partially built outdoors because of resources, again, and the cost to build indoors. So I ended up fostering two puppies, which I've now adopted, Maverick and Goose, big Top Gun girl. But if you are anywhere in the US, there are entities like Dusty Tails that are constantly accepting toys, food, leashes, even if it's just something that your dog doesn't play with or they've outgrown their crate. I highly encourage you to donate to them because they're doing wonderful, selfless, volunteer work out of their own hearts for the animals that a lot of us love and get to benefit from their love each and every day. So that's what I would recommend.
Wonderful. And folks are going to have all their information and their socials in the description below. This is one question that was not on the agenda, so Danielle is not prepared for this question at all. And I've been surprising all my guests with this one. But what I give all my guests, Danielle, is the final word. And what I mean by the final word, you don't have to talk about Red Mirror Studios. You got to talk about cyber or anything about your career. It could be about your favorite cuisine, favorite place you visited. It could be your favorite color of the rainbow, your favorite recipe, anything under the sun. The final word is yours.
Wolf. I'm gonna have to take it from my girl Aretha Franklin. Respect, Respect. As you go out on your day, whether you've listened to this or whatever you're doing, just remember you're always dealing with another human. Whether you're on the phone with a customer service representative picking something up, there's another person and they have their own life, feelings, story, day. So just be respectful. And again, Aretha couldn't have said it better or spelled it out quite literally for us to learn from.
And there you have it. Danielle, thanks so much for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Thank you for having me. This really was a pleasure, Jim.